The first sign that something had gone terribly wrong wasn't the smug tilt of Marcus Hale's chin. It was the unnatural silence that swallowed the corridor the moment I stepped through the biometric threshold that morning. Normally, the air hummed with the low vibration of server racks breathing in unison, soft terminal chimes signaling healthy syncs, and the faint whir of cooling fans maintaining the delicate temperature balance in the heart of the facility. But today, the vault felt dead. No ping from the security loop. No gentle acknowledgement from the system that had been my shadow for 7 years. Marcus stood there holding a single folded printout, wearing that boyish half-smile he reserved for moments he believed he'd finally outmaneuvered someone with actual expertise. "Your access privileges have been suspended effective immediately," he said, voice light as if announcing a minor scheduling change rather than ending my career. Behind him, Tyler Brooks shifted uncomfortably in a crisp new blazer, fresh security badge gleaming on his lapel. He avoided my eyes, staring instead at the empty workstation where my encrypted drive dock had sat for years. My ergonomic chair was gone. The small succulent I'd kept alive through late nights had vanished. Only bare surfaces and coiled cables remained, like a crime scene wiped clean. This wasn't procedure. No prior audit notice. No HR meeting. No formal performance review trail. Just a printed memo and 2 security guards already hovering near the exit doors. Marcus added, almost cheerfully, "They'll escort you out now." The satisfaction in his tone was unmistakable. He thought this chapter was closed. I didn't argue. Words would have been wasted. I unclipped my lanyard with steady fingers, laid my badge on the counter like laying down a final card, and met Tyler's gaze for a brief second. "Watch the Sentinel refresh cadence carefully," I said quietly. "The pattern entropy windows are unforgiving if they slip." He blinked, confusion flickering across his young face. "Good." Let him puzzle over it. As I walked out into the Virginia morning, the autumn air crisp against my skin, the weight of what I'd built pressed on me like an invisible hand. The facility was one of several secure nodes contracted by the Department of Defense for managing the backbone encryption of military satellite communications and interagency cyber defense grids. Lives depended on the integrity of those keys. Nations' secrets flowed through the encrypted tunnels we maintained. And Marcus, with his MBA and political connections, had decided I was expendable because I questioned his shortcuts and refused to rubber stamp rush deployments. I didn't look back as the guards guided me to the parking lot. But in my mind, I was already calculating. The moment my clearance was flagged as lapsed in the central directory, the Sentinel continuity protocol I'd authored years ago had begun its quiet countdown. It wasn't revenge coded into the system, it was responsibility. A layered defense mechanism that verified not just credentials, but living presence, behavioral cadence, and biometric continuity from the designated anchor operator. Me. The protocol operated like a living heartbeat beneath the surface. Every 96 hours, it required subtle reaffirmation through multi-factor biometric deltas, palm vein mapping, keystroke rhythm analysis, response latency to internal challenge queries, and even micropatterns in how the operator navigated command trees. These weren't easily spoofed. They were tied to my historical baseline, accumulated over thousands of logged sessions. Marcus had called it over-engineered paranoia in meetings. He'd signed off on the documentation anyway, barely glancing past the executive summary. By the time I reached my car, the internal clock had started. Without my presence, entropy drift would begin accumulating in the validation trees. Small at first, imperceptible latency in handshake acknowledgements, minor discrepancies in certificate chain freshness. The dashboards would still show green. The system was designed to degrade gracefully, not catastrophically, to avoid easy detection and diagnosis. But the degradation was inevitable. I drove toward my small townhouse in Arlington, hands steady on the wheel. mind replaying the years I'd invested. Late nights after my divorce, pouring myself into the architecture because the work demanded absolute precision. The protocol had been born during a tense 20-month joint task force project with the NSA and Cyber Command. We'd seen too many incidents where political reshuffles or rushed handoffs compromised integrity. My design ensured the system itself would flag and eventually isolate unauthorized continuity breaks, forcing oversight intervention. That afternoon, alone in my home office, I opened my secure personal node, a hardened laptop air-gapped from everything except a monitored VPN tunnel I'd maintained for exactly these contingencies. The dormant monitoring dashboard lit up. Sentinel drift, 0.8% and climbing. Failover shadow mode engaged. No alarms yet, but the clock was ticking toward the first threshold at 48 hours. I leaned back, allowing myself one deep breath. They thought they'd inherited a clean slate. They had no idea the vault was already beginning to reject them. The days that followed carried a strange rhythm. Mornings, I made coffee strong enough to cut through the fog of disbelief. Afternoons, I reviewed old logs from my personal archive, tracing the evolution of the Sentinel protocol from concept to hardened reality. Evenings brought quiet reflection on how office politics could endanger national infrastructure. I remembered the exact meeting where Marcus first pushed for Tyler's promotion. "Fresh perspective," he'd said, gesturing broadly. "We need agility, not legacy baggage." I'd warned the team then that critical systems like ours weren't designed for casual personnel swaps. The continuity anchor wasn't a title. It was an embedded safeguard ensuring the operator's unique interaction signature matched the system's trust model. Without it, fallback mechanisms would activate, gradually isolating sensitive operations until re-verification by the original anchor. Marcus had laughed it off. "You're being dramatic, Elena. This is code, not some sci-fi AI rebellion." He'd never understood that in cryptographic infrastructure, paranoia isn't a flaw, it's a feature. The protocol used nested entropy analysis, measuring not just what commands were issued, but how they were issued. Timing between keystrokes, mouse movement precision, even breathing cadence captured via proximity sensors during high-security sessions. Tyler's patterns would never match. The system would notice. On the third day, I checked the dashboard again. Drift had reached 3.2%. Latency spikes were appearing in secondary validation nodes. The public-facing certificate status, visible to oversight partners, still appeared nominal. But internal queries were beginning to require additional confirmations. Marcus and Tyler would be blaming network issues, vendor patches, anything but the obvious. I thought about my own journey to this point. After years in academia and early government contracts, I joined the firm 5 years ago specifically because they held DoD clearances for satellite key management. The work gave purpose after personal losses, my mother's illness, the end of my marriage. The vault became my anchor when everything else felt unstable. Building the protocol had been my way of ensuring no one else suffered from the kind of abrupt disruptions I'd witnessed in previous roles. Meanwhile, inside the facility, tension was building. I knew because subtle leaks came through industry contacts and public status feeds. Sync times were lengthening. Dual auth prompts appeared unexpectedly. Tyler, eager but inexperienced, was likely escalating tickets to engineering, demanding firmware updates. Marcus would be reassuring everyone with slide decks and promises of streamlined architecture. By day 5, the first yellow alert surfaced in the admin console. Sentinel drift detected. Pattern mismatch threshold approaching. They ignored it initially, as people do with unfamiliar warnings. But the system didn't forget. The protocol was buried in documentation under Legacy Continuity Safeguards, a section Marcus had dismissed as outdated boilerplate. I allowed myself a small, bitter smile while reviewing the logs. The beauty of the design lay in its invisibility until critical. Lights stayed green on the surface. Operations continued. But underneath, the cryptographic root trees were decaying in precision. Validation hashes began failing soft checks. The vault was whispering warnings to anyone paying attention. That night, I received an unexpected call from an old colleague now at Cyber Command. "Heard some chatter about anomalies in your old node," he said carefully. I didn't confirm or deny, but the seed was planted. Oversight was noticing. The following morning, I watched from afar as Marcus scheduled a critical demo for DoD contractors and agency reps. He wanted to showcase the new team structure and prove the transition had been seamless. Tyler would present the interface. Clean metrics. Optimistic graphs. But the underlying entropy had now crossed 5.8%. The handshake trees were starting to reject forged continuity. I sat in my living room, laptop open, coffee cooling beside me. The protocol was doing exactly what it was meant to: protect the integrity of keys that could literally decide outcomes in cyber conflicts. Marcus thought power came from titles and connections. He was about to learn it came from understanding the system's soul. Thursday arrived with the weight of inevitability. Marcus loved Thursday demos. Enough time to fix issues before the weekend. Long enough for problems to fade from memory. The conference room filled with representatives, DoD civilians in conservative suits, contractors with lanyards denoting high clearances, a few agency liaisons whose expressions betrayed healthy skepticism. Tyler stood at the head of the table. Polished terminal projected on the large screen. He beamed with unearned confidence. "We've streamlined the architecture, removed legacy constraints, and accelerated deployment cycles." The metrics danced, graphs pulsing with artificial vitality. Pre-cached data masking the growing drift. One senior contractor, glasses perched low, leaned forward and tapped a specific panel. "Why is the Sentinel root showing stale validation?" The room quieted. Tyler's smile faltered. A small yellow icon pulsed in the corner. Drift detected. Pending continuity refresh. Marcus jumped in smoothly from the side. Minor display lag from the recent rollover. "We're running redundant mirrors. Standard latency. Nothing to worry about." But the contractor didn't buy it. He made a note. Expression hardening. The public certificate feed hadn't refreshed properly in nearly 24 hours. Oversight nodes were starting to flag inconsistencies. I monitored the entire session through a legacy monitoring endpoint they hadn't fully excised. The entropy had climbed to 7.1%. The protocol was now triggering deeper cascade checks across federal partner links, military contractors, NATO sync points, and internal oversight dashboards all began receiving the same subtle signal. Something was wrong with the continuity anchor. The meeting ended awkwardly. Tyler wiped sweat from his brow when no one was looking. Marcus maintained his facade, but the crack had formed. The system had done its job, flagging the breach without overt sabotage, forcing attention from the right people. That evening, the first real fallout hit. I received a secure message through back channels. Questions were being raised at higher levels about unexplained validation failures in the satellite encryption grid. No one had connected it to my departure yet, but the dots were aligning. Inside the facility, panic simmered beneath the surface. Tickets multiplied. Firmware was rolled back and forth. Tyler spent hours trying to manually force syncs, unaware that the protocol rejected anything short of the original anchor's biometric and pattern signature. Marcus blamed transitional growing pains, but the logs told a different story to anyone who knew where to look. By the next morning, the situation escalated dramatically. 3 military police officers entered the lobby in formation, boots echoing, faces impassive. They moved with purpose. The receptionist froze. Marcus hurried out, expecting congratulations or a briefing. Instead, the lead officer consulted his tablet. "We're here for the continuity anchor holder." "Where's Dr. Elena Harper?" Marcus stammered, gesturing toward Tyler. The officer shook his head. "The original anchor. The one with verified biometric continuity." The color drained from Marcus's face. Tyler stood frozen, hand on his desk, realization dawning too late. The officer showed the screen briefly. Active flags listing me as the verified continuity holder. Escrow protocols engaged. Reauthentication required from origin. The system had escalated automatically when drift crossed critical thresholds, notifying command chains without human intervention. Marcus tried to explain. The officers ignored him, issuing orders to initiate fallback procedures and trace the primary asset, me. From my secure location, I watched the feed I'd maintained. The heartbeat of the vault had pulsed outward, alerting the people who truly mattered. The call came at 4:17 a.m. A hardline military prefix. I picked up after 2 rings. "This is Command Liaison confirming location of continuity holder." The voice was clipped. Professional. I confirmed my position calmly. Sentinel Level 3 engaged. Escrow migration initiated. Please advise status of operational continuity. I replied evenly. Offline until original anchor reestablished. There was a pause. Then a new voice. "Colonel Graves here. We need that route rebuilt today." I agreed to meet at the archive bunker facility, a nondescript building hiding bedrock vaults 5 stories down. By the time I arrived, the system had already begun physical key migration to air-gapped escrow containers. Smart cards were printing, archival plates etching redundant material. My old console in Vault 2B still hummed, green status lights confirming integrity. I performed preliminary checks. The vault report read, escrow sync complete. Manual biometric re-anchor required. Continuity flag active. The phone rang again. I confirmed readiness. The colonel pressed for immediate restoration. But I held firm. Continuity required my physical presence and protocol handoff. Later that morning, I walked back through the facility's glass doors. No badge needed. The system recognized me instantly. The receptionist stood abruptly. Silence followed me through the lobby. Survival instinct. I was the firewall now. Marcus waited near the elevators. Face pale. Rehearsing excuses. A DoD liaison in a federal blazer accompanied him. "She's the only authorized re-anchoring operator," the liaison stated flatly. Marcus opened his mouth, but I cut him off, handing over the original signed protocol documents. Section 11C clearly stated continuity was non-transferable during active cycles. Override required federal signatures and original anchor concurrence. Marcus's own signature from 2 years prior sat at the bottom, blue ink next to clauses he'd never read. We proceeded to the war room. DoD representatives, compliance officers, and senior executives waited. I outlined my terms without emotion. Full role restoration reporting directly to federal oversight. No overrides on continuity layers. Permanent removal of Tyler from key systems. Marcus barred from cryptographic decisions. Sentinel protocols preserved untouched. They reviewed. Discomfort rippled. But the liaison nodded acceptance. The alternative was continued lockdown with national security implications. I signed the amended clause. They did the same. Authorship retained. Trigger authority with origin anchor. The final restoration occurred in the vault chamber. No fanfare. Just a hardened terminal and key slot. The military rep stood rigid beside me. Ready to restore continuity. I placed my palm. The system accepted the unique delay curve, historical cadence, and passphrase trees. The screen confirmed, root key handshake complete. Continuity verified. The vault glowed steady blue, only displayed for authentic anchor validation. Certificate trees renewed. Public status boards updated. Continuity restored. Authenticated key holder active. Tyler sat crumpled in the corner, understanding finally that intelligence alone wasn't enough. Presence, humility, and foresight matter more. I addressed him directly. It was never about opening doors. It was about what would stay locked without the right hand on the wheel. Marcus stood outside the viewing area, defeated. As I passed, I met his eyes. "Happy New Year," I said flatly, echoing his earlier casual cruelty. I walked out, the weight lifting slightly. The system didn't care about egos or promotions. It demanded continuity, the unbroken chain of trust and expertise. I'd earned my place not through demands, but through design that protected what mattered most. In the weeks that followed, operations normalized under stricter oversight. My terms held. The protocol remained a silent guardian, and I returned to the chair, not as victor, but as the necessary anchor. The experience left lingering questions. How often do we undervalue the humans behind critical systems? What price do we pay for arrogance in the face of complexity? The vault hummed steadily once more, but its memory was long. It had taught everyone that some keys cannot be taken, they must be earned, respected, and never forgotten.